When drivers see a danger ahead sign on the road, they react instinctively. They slow down, reassess their path, and choose another route. But in the case of one television apprentice, there were no bright warning signs, no clear detour, just an unexpected journey into the underbelly of American labor, one that would reshape how millions saw the value of work. Behind the welcoming smiles and confident voice was not just a host or narrator, but a man placed in a position that demanded humility, resilience, and the ability to learn on the go. His role was simple in concept, but revolutionary in impact. He was the apprentice, not the expert, not the guide, but the student, placed into the trenches of real, often unpleasant labor. And the jobs, they were as real as they were dirty. This is the story of that role, the people who shaped it, the moments that defined it, and the message that continues to echo far beyond television. At first glance, the role of the apprentice on dirty jobs seemed almost laughably straightforward. Show up, get dirty, try not to break anything, and keep the audience entertained. There were no cue cards, no rehearsals, no expert titles to hide behind. The instructions, if they existed at all, were simple. Go where the real workers go, do what they do, and learn along the way. But simplicity on paper rarely translates to simplicity in practice. From the moment the cameras began rolling, the apprentice stepped into environments designed not for visitors, but for seasoned professionals. Individuals who had learned their craft not through textbooks, but through repetition, muscle memory, and years of trial by fire. These weren't workplaces prepped for public relations. These were the forgotten corners of the economy, damp, hot, loud, smelly, hazardous, and often invisible to the wider world. And in each of those spaces, the apprentice arrived not as a host or narrator, but as a temporary laborer, expected to pull his own weight. That expectation changed everything. There was no buffer between the apprentice and the job. Whether shoveling sludge in a wastewater treatment plant or skinning roadkill for a taxidermist, he wasn't there to comment from the sidelines. He was there to do it, with trembling hands, incorrect form, and a deepening respect for those who did it every day without complaint. Each job, no matter how strange or grotesque, began the same way, with ignorance. The apprentice entered each site unfamiliar with the tools, unaware of the risks, and uncertain of the process. What followed was a kind of real-time education, equal parts awkward and enlightening. He asked the questions viewers at home were thinking, often while elbow-deep in substances better left unnamed. He made mistakes. He looked foolish. And that was the point. This wasn't about appearing competent. It was about becoming honest. And that honesty became the foundation of the show's appeal. As the apprentice fumbled through the tasks, something remarkable happened. The viewers began to see the workers differently. The jobs, once dismissed or overlooked, started to feel indispensable. The people doing them, mentors in their own right, were revealed as masters of skills few outside their field could truly understand. And behind every scene of laughter or grimace, there was a quiet transformation happening, not just in the apprentice, but in the audience as well. At its core, the apprentice's role wasn't designed to impress. It wasn't about mastery, elegance, or efficiency. In fact, it was intentionally the opposite. It existed to reveal what happens when someone unskilled steps into the world of those who have spent years perfecting their craft. But the real genius of this role wasn't in how clumsy or comedic it could be. It was in how it bridged the gap between two worlds, the one that watches and the one that works. For too long, the working class, the plumbers, the welders, the garbage collectors, the crab fishermen, had occupied the margins of modern storytelling. Their presence in media, if acknowledged at all, was often caricatured or sanitized. But by stepping directly into their environment with no ego and no illusion of superiority, the apprentice became a kind of human translator. His confusion mirrored the viewers. His struggle became their education. And his willingness to be humbled by hard labor invited millions to do something that rarely happens in mainstream media: respect the people who do the work most take for granted. And respect, in this context, was more than admiration. It was recognition. Recognition that these jobs, often labeled low skill, in fact required deep intuition, technical understanding, and physical resilience. The apprentice's visible discomfort, the aching back, the failed attempts, the awkward tool handling, served a quiet but profound purpose. It dismantled the myth that this work was easy. By making failure visible, the show did something revolutionary. It made learning visible. Not in a classroom, not through a TED Talk, but through sweat, repetition, and often embarrassment. And in doing so, it reframed what competence looked like. It showed that mastery isn't something you can fake, not with charm, not with words, and certainly not with a camera rolling. You had to earn it, and viewers witnessed that truth week after week. The apprentice's role mattered because it wasn't a performance. It was a deliberate surrender to inexperience. And in that surrender, it honored those who had already done the work, quietly and without applause, for decades. More importantly, it sent a message few shows have dared to send: that dignity doesn't come from the type of job you do, it comes from how you do it. The strength of the show did not lie in its host alone, but in the men and women who welcomed him into their world. They were plumbers, welders, miners, pest control specialists, oyster farmers, bridge inspectors, and more. Some had decades of experience. Others were barely older than the host himself. Yet each one shared the same traits: competence, dedication, and pride in work that others often overlooked. For them, the arrival of a camera crew and a curious apprentice wasn't just an intrusion, it was an opportunity. Finally, someone was asking the right questions. Finally, someone was listening. And most importantly, finally, someone was willing to try. The apprentice didn't just shadow their day, he shared it. From waking at 4 a.m. to clean animal stalls to climbing into grease-choked engine rooms, he did everything asked of him, even if poorly. That willingness to try and fail, and try again, became the heart of the show's message. Though the show often looked chaotic, mud, grime, and spontaneous laughter, it was built on a firm foundation of intention. Each episode followed a rhythm: introduction to the job, immersion into the process, and reflection on the experience. The apprentice's presence served as the connective tissue. His misunderstandings created teachable moments. His observations reframed the audience's perspective. And his eventual success, or at least survival, offered a quiet, emotional payoff. This wasn't reality TV as the world knew it. There were no competitions, no staged drama, no prizes. The reward was simple: insight. Behind the camera, a small but dedicated production team ensured the moments captured were genuine. They didn't intervene, they didn't stage reactions. The show's philosophy was clear: truth is enough. As the series gained traction, the apprentice's role began to take on a deeper meaning. People began writing letters. Tradesmen thanked the show for portraying their work accurately. Teachers used the episodes in classrooms. Parents shared them with children. Suddenly, the show wasn't just entertainment, it was education. And the apprentice, covered in filth, gasping for air, and occasionally gagging, became a kind of folk hero. But with praise came criticism. Some questioned whether the show glorified unpleasant work. Others argued it romanticized labor without addressing deeper issues like low wages, limited benefits, and safety concerns. Still, the presence of the apprentice made one thing undeniable: these jobs were real, valuable, and worthy of respect. And that message couldn't be dismissed. When the cameras stopped rolling, the work continued. For the workers, it was just another day. For the viewers, it was a revelation. And for the apprentice, whose name had become synonymous with the show, it marked the beginning of a larger conversation. He didn't return to traditional celebrity roles. Instead, he used his platform to continue advocating for vocational education, skilled trades, and the dignity of labor. The role of apprentice, once seen as a temporary gimmick for television, had evolved into something bigger, a symbol, not just of humility, but of curiosity, gratitude, and the willingness to meet people where they are, on their terms, on their turf, doing work that matters. There's a reason why this format resonated so deeply. It's because it was real. The apprentice was never pretending. He was never acting. He was learning. And in that process of learning, failing, adapting, and showing up day after day, he revealed something quietly radical: that sometimes the most valuable job you can have is to listen, to get your hands dirty, to not be the smartest person in the room, and to be okay with that. Today, long after the original episodes aired, the apprentice's journey continues to inspire. His role remains a reminder that value isn't always measured in titles or degrees, but in effort, humility, and the willingness to serve. Not every job comes with glory, but every job has dignity if we're willing to look for it. If this video inspired you to think differently about work, worth, and what it means to show up, we invite you to share your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more stories like this, true stories about real people doing real work, don't forget to like, subscribe, and tap the bell so you don't miss a future upload. Until next time, keep looking beneath the surface. You never know what kind of work is holding the world together.